Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Look who's back, Keith. We're so happy to have you back. How are you feeling, man?
I'm doing good. It was a not great week last week. It was funny. Somebody commented and actually said, "Are you still having back spasms?" Because there was a couple times I guess I had like a twinge on air. And
Mhm.
essentially, one, let me start with all of the kind messages, both on the YouTube channel, people who emailed me, people who reached out via Twitter. Like, just thank you so much. I appreciate all the kindness. Really was very very nice to see from everyone. But I tore rib cartilage in my side. Don't exactly know how it happened, and it was pretty bad. And they what happened Thursday night was it got so bad that my wife was finally like, "You need to go to the hospital. Like let's go," because I could barely stand, I couldn't sit. Like I was really having a lot of trouble, and we went in. They did a bunch of tests. They gave me some of the good stuff for it. So if I had any weird tweets or anything, that's probably why. Um, Weirder than usual, I guess. But yeah, and we're on the mend. It's just going to take time. There's really nothing they can do for it with that. So it'll take some time. But yeah, but I'm feeling pretty good today. So a little fidgety because certain movements, certain positions, it flares up a little bit. But yeah, I do appreciate everybody reaching out, and thankfully they ruled out more serious stuff and all that because I was a little worried. They thought it could have been my spleen and all these other things, and they ran a whole bunch of tests. I've never had, even though I grew up playing sports my whole life, I've never had a CT scan in my life. So like I did that. We went in the tube and they did the whole scan and everything, and that was a new experience for me. So I'd never had that before. So yeah, we'll chalk it up to just getting old, man, getting old. And I jokingly said, I was like, I think it's all the weight I've lost. I don't have all the fat cushioning my ribs anymore. Like it used to. So because as they always say, you can't pull fat, so you gotta be careful there.
You're bulking up too much with the muscle, man. That's the
Yeah,
that's the problem.
yeah, that must be it.
Well, we're certainly happy to have you back. I'm happy to have you back in action here. I tried to hold down the fort over the weekend without it was not the same. Doing a show with that was just it was not the same. It didn't feel right. So I'm definitely happy to have you back here. And I gotta say, you're putting me to shame. Here you are with torn rib cartilage, and you already put out something today for the basketball bulletin. Oh, look, I put up half of our logo there. There it
There
is.
it is.
You already put out something today over on the basketball bulletin. Your game notes. You're playing injured and still got that out there. I've got a piece that's in progress right now that should be up shortly. If you guys want to check out the basketball bulletin or Substack, I'll put the link in the description down below. Again, Keith's got some game notes out there for today that were absolutely fantastic. So I thought it was funny. I even joked on the show, I think, that I was messaging you, and I don't recall if this was on Twitter or if this was in a text to me, but you like briefly mentioned like I'm back. I'm gonna try to get some work done or
Yeah, it
something.
was
This
on
is
Twitter.
yeah. I'm like, of course you're. This is like just a few hours removed from being in the hospital. Of course you're gonna be trying to work again.
I crave normalcy and routine like few other people you probably know in your life, and most people watching this. I very much I like my routine. I like normalcy. I like when things are, this is what I do, this is when I do them. It's not that I'm not a flexible person, because I am. Like I can do things, but yeah, I was so thrown off. I was like, I just want to do some work. And like Friday morning, the thing I had not done was like, and was honestly stressing me out. I was like, I got to do some transaction updates. I got to update depth charts. I've got some stuff I got to do. And then I'm like, I should do some game notes. And Danielle's like, from what, the half a game you watched in the hospital bed? Like what are you going to write notes on? And then, yeah, so I mostly took it easy throughout the course of the weekend, but I did get a few notes up here and there throughout the course of the day on Twitter. And yeah, I like my routines, man. It's when I'm off it, I don't know. I'm not quite to like Sheldon Cooper levels, but I can get a little bit thrown off like that.
Yeah, and this is why last time you went on vacation, you were texting me from your cruise ship. Like, hey, can you
Yeah.
can you tweet this out for me? I can't get on Twitter. Yeah,
What is
it's
it? What
we
is it
were
they say? Dedicated to the grind.
that's it. That's
There
it.
it is. So yeah, put it on a t-shirt.
All right, let's get into today's news. Speaking of which, and we gotta start putting out t-shirts or something. We'll
Yeah,
work on that. Jalen Brunson. Knee contusion. Now this looked pretty bad. Knee contusion can be, oh bummer, he's out a week. Knee contusion can be you're out a while too. It's such a wide range here. Did not look good for Jalen Brunson with the Knicks. Went out, wasn't immediately ruled out, but that came later on. They need Jalen Brunson, and this comes on the heels. I talked about it over the weekend on the weekend show. I talked about OG Anunoby now getting cleared for on-court activity. He's getting closer to a return, and that maybe the Knicks would start to get healthier. And as that's happening, boom, Jalen Brunson knee contusion. This is a tough blow for a Knicks team that is doing what they can to try to hang on to their playoff positioning right now, but they're in a bit of a battle.
Yeah, they really are. They picked up a good shorthanded win in Cleveland, and I fully realized Cleveland yesterday didn't have Donovan Mitchell, didn't have Karis LeVert, so they were missing some big guns too. But the Knicks were missing Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, and essentially Jalen Brunson. It was very early in the game that Jalen Brunson got hurt, and they still got the win. Josh Hart was amazing in that game. Miles McBride stepped in and played pretty well. They really did a nice job to get that victory, and that was important because had they lost, they would have dropped down behind Philadelphia and into a tie with the Magic, who are Orlando's playing pretty well, 8-2 in their last 10 games, 3 wins in a row. They've moved up the standings, so it's really now a complete fight from 4 to 8 in the East. We've kind of got our tiers. You get the Celtics are alone at the top. They're going to run away with the conference at this point. The Bucks and Cavs are battling 2-3. Then it's Knicks, Sixers, Magic, Heat, Pacers, all from 4 through 8. And then you got Bulls, Hawks, and I guess we'll throw the Nets in there because they've won a couple games in a row now. So that's the kind of bottom of your playing picture in the East. But the good news is Tom Thibodeau said, maybe Brunson plays Tuesday. We'll see. I'm going to kind of guess he probably doesn't, but we'll see. It's
if he's playing, Tibbs is going to play him like 46 minutes.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Look, if you're out there and you're not dead, you can go. So, So, I mean, it's good to know it doesn't sound like it's overly serious. It was good news on Anunoby, as you covered. We still don't really have a real update or timeline on Julius Randle yet. That sounds like that's just going to be a matter of ramping up the physicality and taking contact. And then we'll see on him, but at least semi good news for now on Jalen Brunson. And I'm going to say, since it's 1:30 that we're recording this in the afternoon on Monday, it's probably good news. We haven't had any kind of update of like, hey, after a check, it was bad. Because I think they said he's not even having MRI done or anything. There was no reason to.
That's great. And that's fantastic news again for a Knicks team. You look at it, they're in a battle. I talked about it a little bit over the weekend, but there's a big difference here. You look at they're a game and a half up on the 7th seed. I mean, you want to stay out of the play-in, but also for the Knicks, you'd like to preserve that 4 seed and at least have home court through the first round of the playoffs. I think that would be a nice advantage for them. Now, the 76ers, hopefully Joel Embiid's going to be back sooner rather than later. They've won a couple of games here without him. But the Knicks have been struggling, 3-7 in their last 10 games. They're desperately trying to cling to that 4 seed right now. So that win over the Cavs was really big. And they just need to get their guys back and healthy. I still think this team can be pretty formidable come playoff time. We've seen kind of the ceiling for this group, but they need to get their guys back and healthy, get back into a rhythm, and hopefully hang on to that 4 seed. That's the way things are looking right now for the Knicks. There could be some movement here. We could see Orlando move up. We could see the Knicks slide down. The 76ers, who knows where they will go. They've stabilized things with a couple of wins. But for New York specifically, it's all about hanging on to this 4 seed. I don't see them making a push up to 3. I think there's too big of a gap right now.
Yeah, and if we could pause on the Magic right now, the Magic and the Heat have 2 of the easier schedules remaining in the league. A lot of that is that's buffered by Orlando has a game left against the Wizards, 3 against the Hornets, and then they've got some of the other teams that aren't very good. Where Miami has 2 games against the Wizards and 3 against the Pistons. So they're gonna really benefit from that, which will give them a leg up. New York's right around the middle of the conference there, and Indiana has one of the harder closing schedules left. So we'll see. I think the Knicks are the best team of that group when they're healthy, but the question is, are they going to be healthy and how will it go? And then Philadelphia, we're still kind of figuring out exactly what they are for however much longer. They don't have Joel Embiid. Sounds like we're maybe 3-ish weeks away from him returning. So we'll see what happens with that as well.
Right. So there you can see this is Tankathon, who puts together a pretty good strength of schedule. Orlando, the 28th most difficult. So very easy schedule remaining for Orlando there. So that's certainly going to be a factor. And as you said, the Knicks, middle of the pack, 16th in terms of remaining strength of schedule. But people always look at this as, the end all be all. And it does certainly matter. But when but upsets happen in the NBA all the time. Right. It is not just because you have a difficult schedule does not mean you can't win. Just because you have a difficult schedule doesn't mean you can't lose. Right. We see it happen in the NBA. So it's not everything, but it's worth noting that Orlando does have a very easy schedule remaining, whereas the Knicks have a little bit more difficult one. And maybe that'll end up being a factor here, how the Eastern Conference ultimately unfolds.
And for Orlando, sign of growth, they're beating the bad teams now, because the last couple of times when it looked like, hey, maybe this team's starting to come on a little bit, their challenge was the teams that they were seemingly better than, they couldn't get the victories over those teams. So here we are now. They're starting to clean up those games. Like yesterday, they played the Pistons. It was not a close game in the end. The Pistons made a little run at them at the end of the third quarter, beginning part of the fourth quarter. And then the Magic took care of business and closed it out ran away with it by the time the game ended. So that's big. And then on that strength of schedule, and what do you think? The Celtics have a fall coming. They've got the easiest schedule left.
And part of that is because they don't have to play themselves. Let's be real.
That is a big part of it. Yep, for sure. Now, the other part of it too, though, is they have, which is encouraging, is that's a whole bunch of games they should win. They are also not messing around, not playing with their food, as we say here. But it's also a sign of they've already played most of their tough games, and they've come through already with the league's best record. So their big ones left are the Thunder and the Nuggets, and then they've still got 2 games with the Bucks, which are going to be kind of there. Those are the ones where you're looking for them to just make a little bit of a statement, especially after they lost to Denver earlier this year, lost to the Thunder earlier this year. Those are games where you want to see them kind of come out of it on the other way, but they are just absolutely cruising. That demolition of Golden State yesterday, that was just, as Steph Curry said, that's what we used to do to teams. That's what it felt like. And that was without Kristaps Porzingis too. So Boston rolling along.
Yeah, they are absolutely cruising. And I have to wonder, because I'm looking at their exact schedule right now, not just their strength of schedule. I'm just pulling up who they have and when they have these games. You play Milwaukee late, April 9th. It's their fourth. They have 4 games remaining when they take on Milwaukee, or 3 games after that matchup. I do wonder by then, by the time that second Milwaukee matchup rolls around, that's where you start to really shut guys down. And so that's another thing that, especially if they're so far ahead, just taking a look at this, I wonder how early Boston's going to start to pull back a little bit. And there's been part of this is gamesmanship too. So for example, all right, April 9th, you see the Bucks. April 11th, you see the Knicks. You could face either one of those teams in the playoffs. You don't want to show your hand in those games. You don't want to show them everything. Well, yes, they've got a whole season to pull from and all that. You don't want them to have recent experience of your best stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I do wonder, the Celtics, they're in such a position where they could essentially just coast from here, right? That's where they're at.
Sure.
So I do wonder where they're going to really start to take their foot off the gas. And just start to focus on the postseason. Because you're right. Right now, they're cruising, and they have to balance resting guys and making sure you're at 100% for playoff time and maintaining this momentum, this chemistry that you've got right now.
That's the key part, is it's that whole rest versus rust thing, because it's also important to know when you are one of the top 2 seeds, you will go a full week without playing a game, because you'll finish up on that Sunday the 14th is the final day of the season. The playoffs don't open till the 20th or 21st, depending on which seed you are. And generally it's the number 1 seeds open on the Sunday, because you have to wait for the play-in tournament to fully resolve to figure out who's the 8th seed. So they open on a Sunday. So you'll go a whole week while the the teams in the play-in tournament, they've played. They've played in that week. The teams that are going to be in the 8 seed game will have already played twice in the span of that week. So, and that's not a complaint. That's just the reality of they'll play, they'll have been sharp, they'll be ready to go. And you're going to have to, really lock in and try to figure out, what you are and where you're going to be with that. So my guess is that Sunday, the 14th versus the Wizards, no one's going to play. I don't even think you'll see cameo appearances. Like guys will, they might not even let them in the gym that day. And then the Charlotte game, we'll see. My guess is it's probably that Milwaukee and New York game of the last 2 games where they'll really play. Also, that'll be influenced a little bit by those are TNT games, and TNT is not going to want 2 throwaway games here down the stretch. So a lot of basketball to go yet, but they've put themselves in really good position.
That's a good point. The national TV schedule will also be a factor here in all of this. We're looking at teams shutting things down. Anyway, there's a lot of playoff races obviously still going on. We'll take a peek at the West in just a second here with this topic. Devin Booker sprains his ankle. We were just looking at strength of schedule. The Suns have the most difficult strength of schedule remaining. This is concerning. I mean, Phoenix is in an interesting spot right now when you look at them in the standings. But Devin Booker ankle sprain, to start off there, he's probably going to be out. I believe I saw 7 to 10 days for that right now. Over those 7 to 10 days, just pulling up the Suns' schedule here, it looks like they'd be taking on.
They get the Celtics twice.
They've got the Nuggets, the Raptors, the Celtics, the Cavs, and the Celtics. Whew.
Yeah.
That's rough. Yep. That's rough, especially to not have Devin Booker for those games. So, Kate, first and foremost, can they survive that, or are we anticipating maybe a slide here from Phoenix?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a handy and can pull up the Western Conference standings, I tweeted this out this morning. The star power in the play-in tournament right now, if this is what it ended up being, is outrageous. The Suns, the Mavs, the Warriors, and the Lakers, you could have probably told people at the beginning of the year, along with the Nuggets, those would be the top 4 teams in top 5 with the Nuggets. Sure. And I don't think people would have argued with you too much. They're probably like, yeah, that makes sense. Because even the believers in the Thunder, Timberwolves, I don't think they believed in them quite this level.
Right.
And then Clippers, that there's always a little bit of a lack of buy-in there. So these teams are now down here in the play-in tournament. And for the Suns specifically, you just rattled off. Tough schedule coming up, and they're going to have to do it without Devin Booker. They're going to have to outscore those teams. And that's kind of how they always play. But that becomes that much harder without Booker in the fold. So it's going to be a challenge for sure. I mean, I think we're more likely than not going to see the Phoenix Suns in the play-in tournament. That's just how it's starting to feel now, just without him and in that really hard schedule to go with here, especially while Booker's out. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them down in the 9-10 game too. We might see the Warriors and Lakers and Mavericks catch them from behind.
Yeah, definitely could happen. Now, the Lakers have a very, very difficult schedule as well, but the Warriors do not. The Warriors have one of the easier schedules remaining, so they're the team that I'm looking at that could move up. The Mavs, though, have a pretty easy schedule too, so it wouldn't shock me if it winds up being Lakers Suns in the 9-10 and Mavs Warriors in the 7-8. Now, Sacramento could also factor into this, and I guess the Pelicans could too. They're right there. So the West, kind of as we expected, it's a big jumble. And any prolonged winning or losing streak could send teams either skyrocketing or tumbling, depending on what happens. And it's going to be really exciting to see this all the way down the finish. I think these are the 10 teams, though. Utah has graciously bowed out.
Yeah,
they're not in the mix. It's these 10. The question now is, what's the order?
Yeah, and it's the order at the top, because I think it's going to be a battle all the way through between the top 4 teams in the conference. Then you could almost tell me any order 5 through 10, and I'd probably say, okay, yeah, sure.
Right.
I think the Pelicans, it's probably going to be hard for the Warriors or Lakers to catch the Pelicans. 3.5 games, that's a lot to make up with only 20-ish games left. But maybe, but everybody else, that's pretty tight. So it's definitely gonna be a battle, and it's one of those ones where something like Devin Booker being out for a week and a half could really swing things in a major way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get on to more unfortunate news. I mean, obviously the Houston Rockets, they're not in the playoff push here, but Tari Eason now out for the season. Just unfortunate, we're hitting the point in the year where a lot of injuries can sound a lot more ominous than they are, because they become, season-ending injuries when there's not a lot of season left. We're only a little over a month, 5-6 weeks here left in the season, but what's the situation here with Tari Eason? You and I talked about it a little bit off air, and it sounded somewhat unique.
Yeah, this one's a little scary. Tari Eason had a growth on his shin bone that they sounds like they did some form of surgery, something with that growth. He's had it for years. It is benign, which that's all good news, right? Because then that doesn't mean it's really bad.
Sure.
So they're now basically taking he's been knocked out for the season. My guess is they're saying he's going to be out for 4 months because they're doing a bone graft. Basically, it sounds like they're removing this growth. It sounds like it was causing him issues with his leg. So this seems like one of those things where let's just take care of this so it's not a problem moving forward. 4 months. So that means no summer league for Tari Eason this summer. And then it's questionable. Third-year guy. Sometimes they play. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes those third-year guys who missed a lot of time or haven't played a lot to begin with, they will get in there. But yeah, it's kind of a bummer. Tari Eason's a really fun player. Now, the Rockets have forwards for days. Cam Whitmore is the one primarily benefiting from Eason being out. He's basically picked up a full-time rotation role over the last 2 months. But this is something that's going to have to factor in, and it's something where now, if you're the Rockets, it has to factor in a little bit into your offseason plans of, all right, what are we doing here? We missed a half a season of evaluation on Tari Eason, and we've got to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, that's and so again, the most important thing, it's benign. That's the most important piece of all this. But then losing out some of that evaluation process, I would be surprised if he feels like a guy that's too good for summer league. But
yeah,
I guess there's always the possibility.
It's just more of
most of the time these guys don't play.
Yeah, it's more of a if a guy misses a lot of time.
Sure.
Sometimes you'll see. I always call it the cameo appearance, where they play in like 1 or 2 games,
right?
And then they're out of there because they play in those 1 or 2 games, and you're like, all right, dude, you don't need to be here. What are we doing with this? And it's funny. Someone asked me the other day. They're like, hey, I'm thinking about going to summer league for my first time ever. I know second-year guys usually play. Do you think Wembanyama will play? And I was like, no, because he's going to be playing in the Olympics more than likely. Yeah. So, yeah, there's even if it wasn't, you only see that when it is the guy's pretty good. But like if they're a slam dunk, already an all-star level guy, there's no reason, because teams aren't going to risk anything happening in games that don't mean anything like that for a guy like that. They mean stuff for other guys for sure. So, but yeah, Wembanyama, no, not going to play.
All right, we need to get to the two-way contract deadline, which I believe is today.
Yep.
Is that right? Today is the deadline for two-way contracts. So we've seen a flurry of these moves around the league, as deadlines tend to bring urgency and therefore activity. What do you see? What are the ramifications of this as teams are kind of scrambling to fill out their two-way rosters here?
Yeah, so we've seen 2 things. One at the end of last week, which was the March 1st playoff waiver eligibility deadline. That one passed now. So anybody waived after, we're going to talk about another guy who wasn't waived here in a minute. But anybody who was waived by 11:59 Eastern on March 1st, they are eligible. So a guy like Shake Milton, even though he was waived later in the day, doesn't actually clear waivers, didn't go in as a processed waiver on the 1st, but was waived in time. And why that happens is 5 o'clock is the cutoff for that day's waivers, but he was waived in time. He is going to join the Knicks, and he'll be eligible to play for the Knicks the rest of the year. So we've seen a bunch of moves like that. Then what we also saw and are seeing today is teams are making two-way moves. Now, there's 2 reasons. One is some of them are, hey, we're promoting a guy because maybe the guy's earned it, and maybe we want to have him available for the playoffs, because important to note, two-way players are not playoff eligible, even if they have games left or anything. They're actually not even postseason eligible. They can't play in the play-in tournament either. So no two-way players in those games. So you've got some guys where teams are, let's get them on a roster. Then, but the other part of this is you have this deadline looming of you can only sign guys through today to two-way contracts. Otherwise, that's it. Then nobody's eligible to be picked up on a two-way. And what you may see happening as well, this was the case with the Atlanta Hawks. Trent Forrest had completely run out of games on his two-way contract. He had been active for the maximum of 50 games. So what the Hawks did was they converted him over to a standard contract to have him for the rest of the year. They've got a two-way spot. I believe now through reporting and actual signings, I think Atlanta and Indiana are the only two teams left with two-way openings. So I would expect them to fill them here before the end of the day, but we'll see if they do or don't. There's really no reason to not do it other than being a little cheap and saving a few bucks, but you might as well. So we'll see what happens with that, because it gives you a chance to get a look at a guy. And if he's been in the league only a couple of years, you can make him a restricted free agent, kind of control the process this summer if you want to, if that's the direction you're going. So a bunch of maneuverings happened over the last few days and over the weekend, which also partially drove the whole, like, I've got work to do. Like I was getting really antsy because I'm seeing a million transactions and I'm like, I need to get these processed. So that's the other reason why my stress level was going up a little bit.
Well, that doesn't help you with your recovery, though. The NBA will be. We're not talking about like Kevin Durant got traded at 2:30 in the morning. I gotta. These are two-way guys that are probably very rarely going to see the court. I think it'll be okay, Keith.
Probably. Right. Hey, it all matters, man.
Yeah, that's true.
It all matters.
That's true. All right, let's finish up with this. Otto Porter Jr., you mentioned this. He is away from the Jazz, did not negotiate a buyout with the Jazz. Any thoughts on why? Like, he's the type of veteran that typically gets a buyout done. Usually, I guess some possibilities. Either the team was requesting him to give back more than he wanted to, or perhaps he was not hearing there'd be interest from teams around the league that would allow him to recoup. Typically, players give back the amount they're going to get on a contract from somebody else. Perhaps there just wasn't a strong enough interest from a team that he wanted to go to out on the buyout market. And so he said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do a buyout. I'll just, keep my salary. But it doesn't sound like he's going to be playing for the Jazz anytime soon, which means we'll see what happens with him this summer.
Yeah, his contract's just going to expire and the Jazz are going to renounce him, move on. Jazz have plans to be a cap space team this summer. They'll use a chunk of that cap space, very likely to renegotiate and extend Lauri Markkanen. And then the rest, whatever they do with it, they'll bring players in, eat contracts, however they move forward. My guess with Otto Porter Jr. too is he may not be healthy enough to actually play. He has really, he did not really play at all for the Raptors over the last 2 years before getting traded. Sounds like there's just leg issues. And one of the things that I was told was a couple of teams that were kind of interested maybe in him going into the trade deadline were a little worried of, he's maybe you're not going to hold up for a full rest of the season and then playoff run. So this might be one where it's almost better for him to just kind of sit it out, rest up, heal up, and then get back to work next year as a free agent. And probably going to be a minimum contract guy at this point in his career where it'll be catch on with a minimum. But he's done that once already with the Warriors and turned it into a pretty nice 2-year deal for himself afterwards. So we'll see where all that goes. But that's my guess why we did not see a buyout is in addition to the things you mentioned. He probably didn't have a team lined up. That's probably why he didn't have a team lined up. And at that point, why am I giving up any money? Like might as well just keep my money and rehab here and call it good.
And teams are always on the lookout for 3-and-D style wings. And when he's at his best, he's certainly one of those. So I would be surprised if he didn't get a shot somewhere. Hopefully he can catch on somewhere and then find success again. But I think you're right. I think it's going to be a minimum contract wherever he does wind up.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's it for the news for today. The biggest news, the most important news, though, Keith is okay and he's back and in action. Happy to have you back and getting this first show back under our belt. So that's the most important news for the day. And then we went through, some other minor things on today's show.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Again, thank you to everyone. So kind. It was so many nice messages. It was really nice to see because sometimes Trevor knows this. Sometimes the most we get is negative feedback on stuff, because when you put opinions out there, there's always going to be someone who disagrees with them, and they're generally let's just say the internet is not always the most kind place when there's a disagreement. So it was really nice to see people, and it also made me laugh. The number of people were like, I mean, you're a Celtics fan, but okay, like I'll still wish you well. Like those made me laugh as well. It also made me laugh yesterday, just as an aside on Twitter, when you said Warriors lose.
I do that with the Celtics and the Clippers. I won't put that they lose to those teams, but we did need that to happen.
I loved it, and a bunch of like 99% of the people got it, and like two or three people were like, just shut up, dude. Like the Lakers rule. And it's like, you don't get it, man.
Yeah. You're missing the joke here.
Yeah, you're missing the joke here. Like, yeah. And I appreciated the people who replied with the say my name from Breaking Bad as well.
Right.
Which is a hand up. I've never watched Breaking Bad. Like, it's not a show I ended up catching. So I know I get a lot of crap for that one, but I do get the references. I'm not that out of touch.
You got that reference.
Yes, I did.
All right, everybody. Well, that'll do it for today's show. Again, you guys can check out the Basketball Bulletin, which is our Substack. I'll put the link in the description down below. And don't forget to subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube, as well as the podcast side over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.